So over the past few years, I reviewed the Return of the Living Dead series, and I went into the origins about how it was kind of off-shot from the original Night of the Living Dead.
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
At that point in time, I did hint that at some point I would be doing the actual Dead trilogy, but you know what, since it's Halloween, I'm gonna go ahead and just get the trilogy started and take a look at the first movie in the series. Well, kind of. Romero's Living Dead movies are so much more than just zombie movies, which is funny because they are technically the grandfather of the modern zombie story. Slow, shambling zombies of an unknown origin that eat people. Simple premise, but that's just not the premise when it comes to how Romero does it. Every story in the Living Dead series displays how, in the event of a catastrophe, no matter how serious, the human race's worst enemy is going to be itself. We have this tendency to take a bad situation and just make it far worse than it needs to be. We have this issue where we do this thing where we don't act when action is needed, and then by the time it's too late for any action to actually make a difference, we completely overact. The Living Dead series shows how our emotions and our feelings and our own greed and distrust of each other can basically ruin everything. The entire spectrum of human nature almost always makes everything worse than it has to be. So in the end, the Living Dead movies are less about the zombies and more about the people reacting to the zombie situation. While Return of the Living Dead is the comedy, the original Living Dead trilogy does have its share of satirical moments. It satirizes human nature, even if it is a bit subtle. Now here's the thing, whenever I watch these movies, I usually watch them in this order: Night of the Living Dead 1990, Dawn of the Dead 77, Day of the Dead 85. And if I feel like I need a little more, I'll go Land of the Dead. I don't particularly consider Land of the Dead to be part of the trilogy. It's kind of a complicated thing. Like, I do kind of like the movie, I just think it's more of a side story than anything. And don't even get me started on Diary and Survival of the Dead either. Night of the Living Dead 1990 is one of those movies that was not very well regarded when it came out, but over time it has garnered a following, and if you haven't guessed by now, the video is going to be focused on that one. Because quite frankly, I have a take on the original. I think the original Night of the Living Dead is a cool piece of horror history. I appreciate its place in history, but, you know, it's just not really something I enjoy watching. I respect the work that was put into the movie, and I respect the kind of, effect it had, but I just simply don't enjoy it. And you can hate on me all you want. I look at the 1991 as the definitive Night of the Living Dead experience, and I look at it as canon to the other movies. The original Night of the Living Dead, well, again, it does have its place in history, and it is very creatively done. It has that 60s feeling where it's slow, it's methodical, and it feels kind of like a chore to watch. And yes, you heard me right, I went as far as to say that the 1990 Tom Savini Night of the Living Dead is better than the original. It's a remake that kind of lulls you into thinking it's going to be like a shot for shot, but as the movie goes on, it takes little twists and turns that the original didn't do. It has a similar flow, and some of the same events do happen, but despite that, there are quite a few subversions and different paths taken. For example, the first zombie we see in the first movie, they kind of linger on someone wandering around the graveyard. We don't know exactly what's going on, and it seems innocuous until Barbara gets attacked. We get that in this version, but then we get faked out, and I'm not gonna lie, it got me the first time I watched it.
Hey man, are you okay? It's weird, huh?
They take the base concept in the opening and the introductions and everything and just kind of twist and turn it. We still have Barbara finding the abandoned cabin after the attack in the graveyard. We still have Ben showing up to save the day, and we slowly get introduced to all the inhabitants of the house, which include the owner's nephew and his girlfriend, as well as Mr. Cooper and his family. It's a classic zombie concept because it's a remake of the classic zombie concept. It's a bunch of different people stuck in a situation where they're holed up in a house and have to get along and just completely fail to do so. Honestly, I gotta say, the zombies in this movie are probably the best looking the zombies have ever been in a Romero Dead movie. I am not fucking kidding. While Tom Savini did direct this, it's Tom Savini. You knew he was gonna bring his A-game for the special effects. Tom Savini drew inspiration from autopsy photos, pictures of cadavers, forensic pathology textbooks, and Holocaust footage. To keep the film in tune with the original, he didn't go over the top with the gory zombies. We don't get something like Day of the Dead where a zombie's guts are spilled going out, but honestly, the zombies look really good. They look like corpses that just got up and started walking around. In general, the special effects in this movie are really good. Like, we don't see a whole lot of zombie kill scenes. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 characters who get killed on screen by zombies. Barbara's brother Johnny in the beginning, and Helen Cooper by her own daughter later. It's a little baffling that there's a movie that's directed by Tom Savini with him on special effects, and it has a really bad dummy cut. Like, seriously, this is a dummy cut that's so fucking obvious that it would make Martin Scorsese blush.
Hey, that dummy can't hurt you. He's not even alive. He's dead.
And it doesn't help that Patricia Tallman's read here is really, like, it's overacting but also underacting at the same time. But once again, the zombies are a secondary threat to the looming threat of human nature. Despite the movie being Night of the Living Dead and being a zombie movie, the zombies aren't the primary antagonists. At best, they're just an obstacle for the main characters to deal with. The true antagonists for the human characters in Night of the Living Dead are the human characters themselves. But in a more tangible way, the true antagonist of Night of the Living Dead is Mr. Cooper.
What a place to be stuck! Middle of nowhere. Bunch of yo-yos.
It's the constant bickering between Cooper and Ben that causes the problems for the survivors and their actual survival efforts. And one could say that Ben is just as much at fault as Cooper is because he plays into it, but Cooper is completely unreasonable and he's framed as the unlikable one, so yeah, he's like the true antagonist of the movie. While each of the characters does make the situation worse for themselves in varying ways, besides Barbara, which we'll get to later, it's the complete disagreement and distrust between Ben and Cooper that makes everything escalate. And why does Cooper distrust Ben? Well, they don't outright say it, but I think it has something to do with the fact that Ben is black. Now, in the 60s version, the racial aspect with Cooper's distrust of Ben is certainly present, but in the 90s version, which isn't really timeline but implied to take place in a more modern period, manages to downplay the racial aspect but also make Cooper worse. Hear me out. In a story set in the 1960s, you expect racism. It's not excusable, but it's to be expected from a white-collar, working-class white dude in the country. That was just the dynamic of the times. Both movies do keep it subtle, but Cooper is far worse in the 1990 remake. In the original, you can at least maybe make the excuse for Cooper that he's being controlling about the situation because he wants to protect his family. In this movie, he's being controlling about the situation because he wants to be in control of the situation and can't accept the fact that somebody else would be in control of the situation. It's very clear that he's a controlling and abusive individual when he smacks his wife across the face. And then, when it comes to anything but the way he wants to do things, he's a complete fucking coward. So his distrust of Ben clearly does have the racial aspect, but without the whole wanting to be protective of his family aspect from the original. In short,
This is definitely not going to work.
he's doing it because he's a fucking asshole. The characterization of Cooper kind of falls more into, like, a very inadequate man. He wants to be in control of the situation, and Ben doesn't fall for that. This is also shown with how he's abusive towards his wife and possibly his kid. So I think this is actually a situation where it takes a character who already had very few redeeming qualities and strips him down to almost no redeeming qualities. The overall cast in this movie is pretty solid. You have Barbara, played by Patricia Tallman, who would go on to do stunt work in various things, including Star Trek and Army of Darkness. Ben is played by the late, great Tony Todd, and Tom Towles, who you may remember from House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, plays Cooper. And to kind of round up this horror cast, we have Bill Butler from Friday the 13th Part 7 and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 as Tom. Oh, and Bill Moseley plays Barbara's brother Johnny in the opening.
Coming to get you, Barbara.
It's just kind of like one of those movies where it's like, yeah, all of these are horror actors, and there's a few other actors to round up the cast, and I think it's one of the aspects that makes this movie a standout amongst the Living Dead movies. Not talking down on the actors in the original, but the cast in this is like just perfect for a horror movie. I also find that this movie flows a lot better than the original. It's paced extremely well. It introduces the threat, has the characters come in and meet each other, and it places little zombie encounters throughout the first act, but it takes its time to build the tension and the feuding between characters. It's not quite a shot-for-shot remake of the original, although it may feel as such, but all in all, it feels more like a streamlined version of the original that is far more palatable to the modern audience. I like that all the characters are in the dark about what's going on. They don't know what's happening yet. Like in the other movies, Dawn and Day, like everybody knows what the zombies are, but this is like the night that it happened. And because everybody's confused and doesn't know what the fuck is going on, there's more infighting and there's more general distrust and lack of understanding. They all play similar roles to their original counterparts, besides Barbara, who gets a real upgrade in terms of characterization. I think one of the reasons why I really don't care for the original is Barbara in the original is fucking useless and traumatized for the entire thing. She doesn't do anything.
Why don't you just keep calm?
And I looked up and I said, "Goody." And he grabbed me. He grabbed me and he ripped at me. He held me and he ripped at my clothes.
I think you should just calm down.
Whereas in the remake, she gets to be kind of a protagonist, kind of like an Ellen Ripley type strong female character who goes from being kind of a damsel to being the more proactive protagonist. Granted, one could argue that Ben was the true protagonist of the original, and he's kind of downgraded to the secondary protagonist in this one, but Barbara is the one who figures out what the zombies are.
Losing it, girl.
Barbara's the one that realizes that everybody's overreacting.
You can talk to me about losing it when you stop screaming at each other like a bunch of 2-year-olds.
Barbara's the one who manages to stay logical throughout the movie.
They're so slow. We could just walk right past them. We wouldn't even have to run. We have the guns. If we're careful, we could get away.
And one of the central themes of the series as a whole is that the situation would have been not nearly as bad had logic not been thrown out the window. Now, the thing about Cooper is, like, Cooper is just a fucking asshole. But he does get one kind of moment where you can kind of sympathize with him. Throughout the whole thing where everybody's boarding everything up, Cooper doesn't do shit. He tries to avoid everything, he just wants to hide in the basement. However, when he kind of starts to come out of his shell, he goes for the television, and Ben, after their kind of butting of heads earlier, naturally distrusts him and a little scuffle breaks out, which causes the TV to be destroyed, and then Ben accuses Cooper of wanting to take it to the basement for himself, but Cooper makes a very good point where he's actually in the right.
That was the only way to find out what was going on, and you smashed it! I wasn't taking it downstairs! You can't get any reception in the basement, dickhead!
I think the funniest thing is how Barbara lays out a plan, one that besides the sick girl is the most logical and just kind of gets shut down because everybody's scared of the zombies. They decide to go with this more elaborate and high-risk plan that literally blows up in their faces. Tom, Judy Rose, and Ben decide to take a drive out to Tom's uncle's gas pumps, fighting their way through hordes of zombies to get there in order to gas up their truck. Surprisingly, they make it relatively unscathed, but it turns out they got the wrong keys, and then Tom decides to shoot the lock while there's an open fire in the back of the truck, and boom. Honestly, just watching the survivors bicker and make horrible choices while the threat of the zombies goes from manageable to unmanageable is why this movie is so great. Which, as I said, is a common trope in the Living Dead movies, that human bickering causes most of the problems, etc. It's that, but it's with like a more kind of high-octane feeling, because yes, there's the parts where they're sitting around, nothing's really happening, but there's always that looming threat of the zombies, and when it does pick up with the action, it picks up with the action. And honestly, I think the bottle setting of Uncle Regis's cabin out in the middle of nowhere, and like the fact that it kind of feels like a hangout movie where we're just hanging around with these characters in one setting, kind of gives Night of the Living Dead like a cozy horror feeling. Which I guess by that principle would apply it to the original as well, but I'm not talking about the original, I'm talking about this one. When you're watching this movie, like, the impression I get is that it's basically Night of the Living Dead, but what if Romero kind of sped things up a bit? And I'm not bad-mouthing Romero, but his movies are always longer and slower paced and a little more drawn out, and while that does help with the character moments, it makes it a little unapproachable at times. I absolutely love Dawn of the Dead, but I have to be in the mood to sit through Dawn of the Dead. Same goes for Day of the Dead, but Savini paces this up and keeps the overall spirit of a Romero zombie movie intact, while making it a lot more fast-paced and approachable. And again, I'm not trying to say that Tom Savini is a better director than Romero, but I think it's certainly more attractive if you just want to throw something on and get a quick zombie movie in. Now, in the original movie, the climax is a little different. Things do still break down, but like Barbara just gets fucking killed right away, and it really does end on a downer. In this movie, the climax still does involve everything going to shit and the zombies forcing their way into the house, but it's got a lot more action to it. Ben and Cooper get into a standoff, Barbara just says fuck it and decides to take her chances outside, and she finds Johnny dead in a heap of corpses rather than seeing him as a zombie. But then she gets picked up by some rednecks, so it's okay. Despite being against this throughout the whole movie, Ben is basically forced into the basement, and they throw a little cruel twist ending at us. Essentially, when he gets down in the basement, pretty much knowing that he's screwed because of his gunshot wound, he lights up a cigarette, and then he looks up and he sees the keys to the gas pump just hanging on the wall in the basement. It was in the basement the entire time, and they couldn't find it because Cooper was being a fucking asshole. I like the scene in the morning because I swear that the helicopter there is supposed to be a callback to Dawn of the Dead. Like, it looks like Flyboy's fucking helicopter. But we get to see more of the big undead party, which this does happen in the original, and there's a scene in Dawn of the Dead that explores it, but we get to see Barbara among them this time, helping with the cleanup effort. Of course, she has to go back to the cabin, and she's not happy to see that Ben got turned into a zombie. It's like a downer ending, but it's different from the downer ending in the original, where Ben actually survives and gets shot in the head by the Hicks. But I think by far the most cathartic moment of this ending is when Barbara sees that Cooper is still alive and just decides to blow his fucking head off.
You came back.
Because he made everything worse. It's kind of sad though, like you can kind of feel for Cooper, because like he survived all of that. He watched his daughter turn into a zombie and kill his wife, and then he survived the shootout with Ben just to get executed and passed off as a zombie.
There's another one for the fire.
Well, geez, Elmer, I don't think that guy was actually dead. Shut your mouth, boy. I'm trying to hit that shit. I want to solve one of the greatest mysteries to plague mankind. Geez, Elmer, what mystery is that? I want to see if them carpets match them drapes, you know what I mean? I want to get that taste of ginger in my mouth, if you know what I'm saying. I want to be picking that shit out of my teeth all night long. Jesus fucking Christ, Elmer, that's fucking disgusting! Boy, don't you sit there and pretend like you wouldn't be balls deep in Butch Molly Ringwald if the opportunity arose. The ending where Barbara looks among all the chaos and she's just like completely gone is definitely more powerful than the ending from the original. I guess it serves to highlight that we are just as savage as the zombies, if not more savage, because we're doing what we're doing to the zombies out of sadism. The humans are stringing them up, having beers, shooting them in the head, just like, you know, they're doing their cleanup efforts, but it all seems like a big party. The zombies do this out of instinct. They're not treating it like a party, so I guess Barbara's line here is pretty accurate.
They're us. We're them, and they're us.
Say what?
Night of the Living Dead 1990 is certainly a solid horror remake, which is a rarity in a world of not-so-solid horror remakes. It does what needed to be done with the concept, which is modernize it, streamline it pacing-wise, and, you know, make it entertaining, up the effects and everything, but it does pay its respects to the original. But I stand by the blasphemy that I may be spewing here when I say that this movie is better than the original in every possible way. The zombie performances are better, the zombies look better, like the Sarah zombie herself is actually fucking creepy as shit. Like, I don't know where they got this fucking kid, but I hear a lot of people throwing around like, oh, what's the best zombie performance? Like, you know, I hear Tarman, I hear Flyboy from Dawn of the Dead. Like, the kid who played Sarah Cooper in this, like, that's gotta be up there, like, with Tarman and Flyboy. Like, she's just, like, the way she shambles and, like, her facial expressions, and, like, the way the kid looks in general kind of works with the zombie thing, like, it's fucking creepy. In the original, like, yeah, it's kind of creepy having a kid stab their mother to death with a trowel, which feels really out of place when you understand how the Romero zombies work. Yes, they can use tools, but they usually eat people. But like the way she's twitching and moving, like that kid actress fucking killed it as that zombie. Honestly, I really do like Night of the Living Dead 1990. It's like one of the better zombie movies. Zombie movies to me, they're very hit or miss. Either get something genuinely good or it's just crap. It's a perfect modernization of a horror classic, but you know, I guess maybe using the word perfect isn't right because it isn't completely perfect. There are some flaws here. For as good as the zombie designs are, for as great as the cast is, it does kind of drag in the middle, and I really can't blame that on the movie itself. That's kind of just how Night of the Living Dead was, and this was intended to be a respectful remake. The original had a lot of scenes of just people talking. It made the movie really boring, but that's to be expected for a 60s movie. This one tried to keep that alive. It did make the movie a little bit more lively, but all in all, the middle act, like, if you're kind of not in the mood for the movie, you might drop out during the middle act during a rewatch. But that's a very minor flaw. Another flaw I have is, like, I don't particularly like the score they used in the theatrical version. I know the work print version had a slightly different one, and I think the upcoming uncut version has a different one. I'll get more into that in a second. But the score itself just feels kind of cheap. Besides the end credits song, Passage to Normal, which is like a cool rock synth song. You can hear it over the credits. I also played it at the opening of the video. I have kind of a soft spot for this movie because this was actually my first ever zombie movie. It was like the late 90s, early 2000s. I was at my cousin's house. We were watching the Space Channel, and as you know, I've mentioned before, Space used to play these horror movies. It's where I saw The Fly, it's where I saw The Blob, and this movie was airing, and I just remember I must have been like 7, 8 years old just watching this. Like, I knew what zombies were because of The Simpsons. Dial Z for Zombies was like the first zombie thing I ever saw, but like I had never seen like a Living Dead movie up to that point. It's one of those things where like you're too young to really like cognitively register what you're watching, but I knew it was a zombie movie. I just forgot which one it was. And then years later, I'm like going through my horror phase. I'm like, oh, let's see this Night of the Living Dead remake, and I put it on. I'm like, oh shit, that's what that movie was. So there's a little bit of nostalgia behind my love for this movie. The whole reason they remade Night of the Living Dead was because George Romero made next to nothing for the original movie. There's a whole copyright issue with the original movie, which led to it falling into the public domain. It's why there's so many DVD releases of the original movie. It's why if I wanted to, I could upload the full original Night of the Living Dead and it would be not a copyright hit. This remake came about in the late 80s when 21st Century Pictures wanted to remake it, and George Romero wrote the script and actually reunited with John A. Russo and Russell Striner on modernizing his classic movie, which Tom Savini took the director's chair on. The main issue with this movie at the time of its release is it was released in the 1990s. Horror was kind of falling out of favor with the public. It wasn't the big hit that it was in the 80s. And this movie kind of suffered. On a $4.2 million budget, it only made about $5.8 million. So it's like just a barely break-even type deal. In the years to come after that, it did garner somewhat of a cult following, and many fans like myself actually do prefer this version to the original. Tom Savini himself has stated that this movie is quite possibly the worst experience he ever had. It was his directorial debut, and he was dealing with producers up the ass. He had a specific vision in mind for this movie that he was just not allowed to follow through on. Since George Romero was busy working on something else, he wasn't really there to stick up for Savini, so he had to kind of bend the knee. Now, this October marks the movie's 35th anniversary, and actually a couple days ago, they released a director's cut of the movie. I have not gotten my hands on a copy of that director's cut. I did want to kind of do a little blurb on it to explain what was in there, but from what I gather, it's based on this work print that Savini used to show at conventions. It does restore the whole thing that Savini originally wanted to do, where the movie started out as black and white and kind of got colorized as it went through, but it also does feature some restored scenes of violence. And if the work print is anything to go on, it has a different score. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I did not get my hands on a copy of this prior to this review, so I was unable to really look into it. Nevertheless, if you haven't seen the Night of the Living Dead remake, honestly, I highly recommend it if you like zombie movies and if you like the Living Dead movies. It actually kind of fits better with a rewatch of Dawn and Day as like the starter movie. It feels more modern, and some of Romero's developments that he had for the zombies, such as the kind of like idea that they have human memories lingering, does show in this movie. How the Sarah zombie just walks past Cooper, how when Ben comes out as a zombie he doesn't really attack Barbara right away, so it does definitely fit better with those two. And honestly, it's got like an all-star horror cast, so like if you're into that shit, watch this movie. Now I'm gonna address kind of the elephant in the room. I had originally announced that I was doing the entire Living Dead trilogy for Halloween. I wrote them out, I even recorded the Dawn of the Dead one, but the problem was like I did that and then I'm looking at it, I'm like, really isn't a lot I can bring to those movies. Like a lot of other people on YouTube have reviewed those, and I feel that it would be kind of redundant for me to do so. Like maybe down the line I'll take a look at them, but as of now, the only movie I wanted to do was just this remake, because I don't know, like there are reviews on it, but not a lot. Nevertheless, I do have some stuff planned for Halloween. This isn't gonna be like one video for the month. I know my flow has been a little bit slower because I'm working and everything, but I do have some other videos planned for Halloween, so stay tuned, the season is upon us. If you like this video, feel free to hit that like button, drop a comment, subscribe to my channel, and tell your friends about me. Halloween is upon us, and I will see you next time.
It doesn't matter. He knows we're here. It's too late now. There's no escape. No!